Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Mrs. Pataudi, Sharmila Tagore, for inviting me here, honoring me for this very first lecture. And I feel privileged because I grew up admiring two cricketers. One was my first cousin, Javed Barki. And Javed Barki and Mansoor Ali Khan played together at Oxford. So they were in the same team, along with another Indian, Abbas Ali Beg. So the three of them were at Oxford about a decade before me. So as a boy growing up, Javed Barki was, because he was my first cousin, my family, we always wanted to emulate him. So here was someone who was good at studies and also good at sports. So this, thank God I followed a role model. Otherwise I would not have studied. And the biggest blunder I would have made if I had not studied. The other, of course, big reason I studied was my mother. So when I was 18 and on the verge of playing for Pakistan, she insisted that I would only play if I completed my education afterwards. So of course we had these role models. And from Javed Barki we always used to ask about Mansoor Ali Khan. And now this is what he used to say. Now remember, I'm a child growing up, my hero telling me, he said that if Mansoor Ali Khan had not lost his eye, he felt that he would have broken all records. That such was his talent in university when they used to be playing together. He said the quality of strokes he could play, he said mere mortals could not play those strokes. And to actually have gone on with one eye and have the sort of record which Mansoor Ali Khan had, the mind boggles what he could have done with both eyes. So we grew up, me looking up to my cousin Javed Barki, who became the youngest test captain of Pakistan, sadly only for one series. He had similar sort of experience which the current Indian team is going through. And he was dropped. But Tiger did go on to captain India for a long time. And when I first saw him, it was in a benefit match in Hyderabad. I don't know what benefit, it was my first time in India, and it was my first experience meeting Tiger. And I had always looked up to him, this amazing, glamorous cricketer who was also educated. Remember, just for the audience, it is the most difficult thing to do, to play international sport as well as complete your university education. It is the most difficult thing to do. Those who have done it would understand how difficult it is. Because by the time you're 14 to 15, if you have to play international sport, you have such a focus. The obsession is such that everything else falls away. If you do not have the focus, you cannot make it. So then to force yourself to also study, it takes incredible willpower. But once you do it, you have a huge advantage over other sportsmen who haven't had university education. So the reason I succeeded in captaincy was mainly because I had this huge advantage of having quality education. Of course, I was privileged. I went to a school where we had the best playing facilities and we had quality education. So did Tiger. He also went to quality school, good sporting facilities and good education. Then, of course, I had this advantage, like him, going to Oxford. You could play first-class cricket, quality cricket, and then get a quality degree. And so it was such an advantage, and when I look back and I keep telling my boys, that it is such an advantage to be able to do both, because both complement each other if you can do it. Education, the greatest thing education does, it structures your mind. Successful people, the advantage of, the reason why people are successful is because, not because how they handle success, how they handle failure. In failure, you should have the ability to be able to analyze your mistakes better than others. You should be your best critic. That power of analysis is sharpened by quality education. So I became my best critic. I could analyze, I didn't need to read the morning newspapers to tell me what had gone wrong. I could analyze my own mistakes. The same happened when I became the captain. I analyzed the team's mistakes better than others. And so you could correct them. Once you have the right analysis, you have the ability to correct them. Not everyone has this ability. I'll just give you an example how a wrong analysis can actually exacerbate failure. It can make things go from bad to worse. We were touring India in 1979. First time after 20 years, a Pakistan team had toured India. And such was the interest. I have never seen before or after more interest in a cricket series than I did in 79. I remember even side matches were jam-packed. Even in the side matches, you couldn't get into the stadiums. And of course, India, Pakistan, the pressure on the players was immense. So we came to India after beating India in Pakistan. We thrashed India 2-0. So we came here, we were on paper a much better team than India. We had Zahir Abbas. I have never seen in my entire career a better timer of the ball than Zahir Abbas. He was just, it's something, no matter how much you practice, you can never develop that timing. It's a gift from God, and he had it. And so he had just destroyed the Indian bowling attack. So we come to India, a lot of expectations, and of course, Zahir he failed in the first match. And failed for him meant he only got about 40 runs. So for Zahir Abbas, it was a failure. So the pressure he put himself under, he started failing. Now I'm sharing a room with him. So I'm exactly telling you what happened. How a wrong analysis can exacerbate your failure. So first, after a lot of thinking about what was going wrong, I saw him standing in front of the mirror and looking at his glasses. And so I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I think I might be losing my eyesight." Anyway, he had it tested. His eyes were perfect. Again, he fell. The next match, he failed again. Again, he's coming. I'm looking at him in the dressing room, and he's testing his grip. There's something gone wrong with my batting grip. So I reminded him, he'd just broken all records in Pakistan. Again, he failed. Third test match, he failed. He comes to me and he says, "Look, Imran," and of course, he's failed because he's in bad form. I have a muscle injury, so I couldn't bowl. So he comes to me and he says, "Look, Imran, I've just discovered why you and I are not performing." He said, "It's black magic." And the great Zahir Abbas, had himself dropped from the next test match because he thought he was under spell. So I'm just telling you the advantage university education has. I'm just sidetracking. It makes you, you are your best critic. Anyway, so I met Zahir Abbas and I met Tiger Pataudi in 1977. We were in awe of him. And as Bishan Singh Bedi said, I have never seen a more casual man than him. A cricket bat. Now look, you have to have a bat. The more you play, the more you realize that there are certain bats that fit you, the grip and so on. To just pick up a bat and just go into, it's unheard of in the cricketing world. But what Pataudi had, what the current, in the cricketing world I'm talking about, what you miss now, is that cricket was not his bread and butter. It's very important to understand this, because if it becomes your profession, you will never take the risks to achieve great heights. You will always play it safe. For me, people who achieve great things in this world, whether it's in sport or anywhere, have that ability to take risks. You aim high, you take risks, and you develop this fearlessness that you think that whatever happens, you will be able to cope with it. What is called, which makes you invincible, is self-belief. You believe in yourself. You think whatever happens, you can overcome it. And so you take these risks, you take the fall, but you think you can pick yourself up and again take on anything. In my experience in county cricket in England, I found that this is what the bread and butter county cricketer, whose profession was county cricket, they refused to take risks because they were scared that it was a job. Now, this is the big difference, which I always thought Tiger treated cricket as something, which was to be enjoyed. It was a challenge. It was to achieve heights which others hadn't achieved. But it wasn't his bread and butter. And that's why he was so flamboyant. That's why he had this charisma. So he could maximize this talent. Tiger could have probably got more runs, but he would have lost that flamboyance. And so this is what made him such an attractive, a role model for people like us. I again repeat, my mind boggles what he would have been if he could see from both eyes. Because anyone who has batted, and especially against fast bowling, even spinners, but fast bowling, there's no way you can have that same, with one eye you just cannot play fast bowling the way he did. I remember Ian Chappell met me first time when I met Ian Chappell, and I asked him, because we were so curious about this enigma. So I asked him about Tiger, and he told me about these runs he had got in Melbourne against Australia, and Garth McKenzie was, at that time, one of the fastest bowlers. And he just told me how he had just destroyed him with one eye. So a cricketer would really understand what a monumental task he had, not only to make the name he did with one eye. And I remember asking him how it happened, and it's just one of the freaks which happens in one's lives that stopped him from probably achieving double what he achieved. Today, I feel honored that I have been invited here to this first lecture. And I've been asked to talk about Indian cricket. At the moment, I'll just use one word for Indian cricket: consistent. To lose 8 test matches in a row, it's an achievement. It's not easy. I mean, you would at least draw one match, but to lose 8 is... it's very important for, I think it's a wake-up call for Indian cricket. It's very important to analyze this now. Again, analysis. What is going wrong? How come a team which just, when I was last here, was right up there winning the World Cup? And how come this has happened? I think it's very important to understand that India, if it wants to be a leader in world cricket in terms of performance, because you're only a leader if your team performs. You can't be a great cricketing country if your team has 8-0 on the scorecard. So what is my analysis? What do I think? What should India do? First of all, it must understand that if you pay so much emphasis to 2020, you're going to pay a huge price in the real cricket. Because a test cricketer, or let me say, connoisseurs of cricket, They will only rate test cricketers. I don't even know what 2020 averages of any batsman, neither am I interested. I don't even know one-day averages of cricketers. But when I look at a test career record of a cricketer, that's how I evaluate him. Same with the team. Because as the name says, test cricket, it is the ultimate test of the total capabilities of a cricketer. Talent can excel in one-day cricket. Sheer talent you can do well in one-day cricket. But in a test match, not only is your talent tested, your technique is tested. In 2020, you can get away with a faulty technique, not in a test match. And then above all, your temperament is tested. And then there are two facets to temperament. One is, for instance, when I used to watch Sunil Gavaskar bat, I could almost see a computer at work. His mind was like a computer. You would be sort of looking at him, everything would be sort of being processed. The conditions, the playing condition, what the bowler is doing, which bowler to score runs off, when to score runs off, the total management of his innings. You need to have that mind to manage your innings. And that is a skill. It's a training of the mind. The other aspect of temperament, guts, fearlessness, determination. So you can have all the talent in the world, when that fast bowler starts running in, you're back in the pavilion. You only want to play against not the big boys. So it takes guts to face fast bowling. When I was at my peak as a fast bowler and I was running in, I would be looking at a batsman's eyes. Not his wickets, not his stumps, just his eyes. Because his eyes would tell me the state of mind he's going through. What is the state of mind? Is he, how brave is he? Is he confident? Is he fighting the fear inside him? So that's where only test cricket evaluates the total temperament, the character of a player. You can get away, as I said, you can in one-day cricket, in 20, you'll get away with things. You cannot in test cricket. You will be found out sooner or later. And so India has to decide, should it go this way, massive crowds, 2020, all the glamour, Bollywood, a lot of money. I did not, in 21 years of international cricket, I did not make as much money as a mediocre player does in IPL in one season. But it's not, and by the way, there's a lot of envy too. And this is, I think players should make as much. Before me, people even made less money than I did. So what? But your cricket should not suffer. You must have balance. You've got to balance this now. In 1990, I played an exhibition match in New York against India, and it got rain affected. So the match was reduced to 20 overs each. And there was an expatriate community watching it. And I thought, you know, they were poor people, they've been deprived, they've come to pay for this match, and it's been reduced to 20-20 match. I saw the crowd loved it. Their children who had never seen cricket, it was their first time they were seeing cricket, loved it even more. So I thought, this is the way of introducing cricket to non-cricket playing countries. I wrote to Kerry Packer. I said, you know, I said, look, let's just have a 2020 series in the United States to introduce cricket to the Americans. Because it's the same duration of a baseball game, but much more action-packed and would make great television. Because Kerry Packer came into cricket because of television. So Kerry Packer really, you know, we discussed the idea and we thought about it, but sadly he fell ill, and so the idea fell through. Little did I realize that 20 years later, the same concept would be introduced to cricket-playing countries. I thought it would be for non-cricket playing countries. I didn't realize that cricket playing countries would be sort of running to watch 2020 matches. But no, it has its advantages. 2020, you're going to pull new people in, people who don't understand cricket. It's the best way to introduce them to cricket is 2020. But if this overtakes everything, if I'm I'm a young cricketer. I'm all sort of, I've broken into the cricket. Who had never seen cricket, it was the first time they were seeing cricket, loved it even more. So I thought, this is the way of introducing cricket to non-cricket playing countries. I wrote to Kerry Packer. I said, I said, look, let's just have a 2020 series in the United States to introduce cricket to the Americans. Because it's the same duration of a baseball game, but much more action-packed and would make great television. Because Kerry Packer came into cricket because of television. So Kerry Packer really, we discussed the idea and we thought about it, but sadly he fell ill, and so the idea fell through. Little did I realize that 20 years later, the same concept would be introduced to cricket-playing countries. I thought it would be for non-cricket playing countries. I didn't realize that cricket-playing countries would be sort of running to watch 2020 matches. But no, it has its advantages. 2020, you're going to pull new people in, people who don't understand cricket. It's the best way to introduce them to cricket is 2020. But if this overtakes everything, if I'm a young cricketer. I'm all sort of, I've broken into the cricket scene, and I'm watching these massive crowds in 2020 cricket, plus Bollywood actresses. And there I'm watching test matches, empty stadiums, 5 days of hard slog. So I'm going to be tempted. I'm thinking, this is the cricket where I'm going to prepare myself. And the way I will prepare myself for 2020 cricket is completely different to how I have to prepare myself for a test match. Because 2020 cricket means, yes, I develop my strokes, I'll be a good fielder, it's a plus point. I'll run in between the wickets, I'll work on my fitness. And if I'm a bowler, I will just try and develop variety so that the batsman can't line me up. I only have to bowl 4 overs. So I'll just bowl different deliveries so batsman can't hit me for 6s. But I won't know how to take wickets. And this is the problem the current Indian team has. They cannot take 20 wickets in a test match. In fact, they haven't even taken 10 wickets in one innings most of the time. So how are they going to win a test match? Because if you're geared to 2020, the technique is completely different. And the batsman, if he's just going to go learn to play shots, but not develop a defense, he's not going to last in test cricket. So the balance in Indian cricket has to be right. And may I be bold enough to suggest that the same format you have for 2020 should go into your first-class cricket. Because if you reduce the number of teams, even get foreign players, reduce the number of teams, raise the standard per team, and make your top 6 teams compete like the way you do in 2020, India will be a formidable test cricketing force. Because why is Australia consistently the best cricket team in the world? Because I played Shield cricket and I discovered why. Because all their talent is pooled in 6 teams. And so the 6 teams compete with not that many matches, but they compete against each other with such aggressiveness and competitiveness that it is that competitive cricket that produces test cricketers. And it's the longer form of cricket. It's 4-day cricket. So they are tested. So any Australian cricketer that excels in Shield cricket automatically becomes a test cricketer. In India, in Pakistan, there is such a big jump from first-class cricket to test cricket that, our domestic cricket just does not develop test cricketers. It's a huge jump. That's why you have a situation now where Your top stars, your batsmen are aging, but you don't have their replacements. Who are you going to replace them with? It's all very well saying each time the team loses, bring in the youngsters. But, I mean, if it's possible, you might even have a worse result than the current one, 8-0. If it's possible, I'm saying. Because if the youngsters can't play at the top level, if the difference between an emerging cricketer and an old cricketer who's declining, if the difference is marginal, yes, back the youngster. But if there's a big gulf between the two, how are you going to bring the youngster in? And you don't even know, because when you bring a young player in, you don't know whether he's going to make it or not. So you're taking a big risk. On the other hand, if you had the Australian model with top 6 teams competing aggressively against each other, anyone who excels in first-class cricket will automatically become your test cricketer. And your bowlers will have to get wickets. In the longer format, unless you get wickets, you're a non-entity, you're not a bowler. So if Indian cricket can now learn from this debacle, do the right analysis, don't think of it as black magic or betting, think where you've gone wrong. I think get the balance, have a shorter 2020, don't have it too long. I mean, the 2020 goes on and on. But have the same format in your first-class cricket, Ranji Trophy, I don't know what you call it now, but have it all talent pooled into 6 top teams, 6 regions. You might even get a couple of overseas stars, get them into this first-class cricket, have intense, just have a 2.5 or 3 months first-class cricket competition. You will then develop test cricketers. And unless you develop test cricketers, India can never be a cricketing force. You will be judged, world cricket will judge you on your test cricket performance, not on 2020. And World Cup is once in 4 years. So what happens in those 4 years? Even if you're now world champions, if you keep getting thrashed, you won't be rated. So finally, again, thank you very much for inviting me here. This is a real honor for me. Someone who I looked up to, Mansoor Ali Khan, and then subsequently, of course, we met again and again when he would come and commentate. Always crisp comments, cynical, typically Tiger, but always intelligent. Thank you for that. And for Indian cricket, there are lessons to be learned. Every debacle, every crisis is an opportunity to improve yourself. This is probably a wake-up call to get your structure right. There are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. You have to get your system right. You've got to have a proper, competitive, domestic, first-class cricket structure. I've been saying this for 30 years in Pakistan. For 30 years I've been saying it, and for 30 years, I've stopped saying it last 5 years because I knew that they can't do it. But I know that you must get your structure right now, because there is a tsunami in the name of Tehreek-e-Insaf government coming into Pakistan in the next elections. And when it does come, we will fix our structure. And if you don't fix yours, you are going to get a lot of thrashing. Bad times ahead for you.